Have you ever asked yourself who truly controls your life? Not just in the big decisions, but in those small, almost imperceptible ones that guide you every day? Perhaps you believe you are in command, that every choice is a result of your free and conscious will. But what if I told you that behind every yes you give, every no you swallow, there is a hidden, invisible force that pushes you without you realizing it? Nietzsche called this force the will to power, not in the sense of oppressing others, but as the vital force that makes you exist, that makes you want to live more than just survive. This will is the spark that separates those who merely breathe from those who truly live. And it is about this that we need to talk today, because in it lies the secret you ignore, the secret that determines who you become. Imagine waking up in the morning, opening your eyes, and before even brushing your teeth, you are already following the script you were taught. Be good, be productive, be pleasant. But somewhere inside you, a voice whispers, perhaps so softly that you don't even notice, that there is something more. A desire that goes beyond being accepted. A call that says you were not born to fit in, you were born to expand. But life trained you to silence this voice. From an early age they told you that wanting too much is selfish, that desiring too much is dangerous, that ambition can corrupt you. And so you learned to bow your head, to be grateful for what they give you, not to ask for more than they deem deserved. But Nietzsche would say that life is will to grow, to overcome limits, to become fully who you are. He was not talking about dominating others, but about dominating oneself, about conquering the freedom that arises when you stop living through the eyes of others. Perhaps you think you have already freed yourself. Perhaps you think every choice is yours. But I ask you, how many times have you said yes when you wanted to say no? How many times have you accepted less so as not to disappoint? How many times have you hidden what you felt to maintain peace? Every time you do this, you give up your power. You hand over control of your life to another, and that's where the will to power escapes you, silently, like sand between your fingers. Nietzsche was not talking about arrogance. He was talking about courage. Courage to look within and ask, what moves me? What do I want beyond what I am told I should want? This is the most uncomfortable question, and the most liberating, but it's not easy to answer it, because the will to power is not just strength, it's also responsibility. It's looking at your own shadows and understanding that often, it's more comfortable to blame others, circumstances, fate. It's easier to say, it wasn't me, it was the boss, it was the family, it was the system. But Nietzsche invites us to break with this illusion. He reminds us that as long as we shift the blame outwards, we remain slaves to what is external. And as long as we are slaves, no freedom is possible. Because freedom cannot be bought with excuses. It is conquered with choices. Breathe deeply. Feel the air entering your lungs. At this very moment, you are alive. But living is not just surviving. It is choosing who you want to be. It is choosing not to be a hostage to the voices that molded you. It is having the courage to listen to your own voice, the one you often silenced so as not to displease. The will to power is this. It is the call of the soul that says, enough of being a puppet. It is the force that lifts you when everything around you pushes you down. It is the spark that makes you remember that you are not here just to fulfill roles, but to write your own story. Perhaps you don't realize it now, but this is the beginning of a journey inward, a journey out of the invisible bars that were built around you, a journey to awaken the strength you always had, but forgot to use. And on this journey, there is no turning back. Because once you have seen the chain that binds you, you can no longer pretend it doesn't exist. Nietzsche knew this, and that is why he invited us to view life as a work of art, our work of art, a work that cannot be painted with fear, but with courage, with desire, with authenticity. And you, are you ready to paint yours? Are you ready to take the brush of your own life? Because if you don't, someone else will paint for you, and in the end, you will look at the painting and not recognize yourself. Today, in this video, you will understand why the will to power is the secret you ignore and how it controls your every step. And if you have the courage to face it, perhaps you will discover that deep down, you were never a hostage to fate. You were always its creator. There is something within you that often goes unnoticed, a silent force that moves you, even when you believe you are still. It is the hidden instinct, the will to power that Nietzsche explored so much. It is not just the desire to have or to dominate others, but the desire to become who you are, to occupy the space that life reserved for you, even before the world told you how you should be. It is like an inner current that sometimes you try to contain with arguments of common sense, with rules of behavior, with the expectations of those who never understood the depth of your being. But no matter how much you try, this force returns, resurfaces, insists, like fire burning in your chest. And no matter how many layers of fear you build over it, at some point it finds a crack and reminds you that you were not born to fit in, but to expand. Nietzsche said that the will to power is the essence of life, not as tyranny, but as creative impulse. It is the force that makes you get up after every fall, that pushes you to dream even after all disappointments, that makes you look at the abyss and still choose to walk. It is like an underground river that, however much the earth tries to contain, always finds a way to reach the sea. This hidden instinct is your vital flame, and ignoring it is like living in black and white in a world that could be colorful. Perhaps you have felt this force on days of anger, when everything inside you said enough, but you chose silence so as not to displease. Perhaps you felt it when something pulled you to change direction, but you didn't have the courage to disappoint those who always told you what to do. It is this will to power that you need to embrace, because it won't go away, and the more you repress it, the more it corrodes you from within. Breathe deeply, feel your body, observe where in your chest this force hides, because that is where your courage to fully exist resides. That is where the secret Nietzsche wanted to reveal lies, that the greatest power is not what you exert over others, but what you exert over yourself when you stop running from your own truth. Perhaps you have never stopped to think about this, but every time you remain silent so as not to displease, you hand over the rudder of your life to someone who does not know how to navigate your sea. And the hidden instinct remains there, locked away, waiting for the time to remind you that life is much more than surviving. It is about flourishing, even in the most arid soil. Nietzsche said that becoming who one is the greatest of all battles, and that is what the hidden instinct calls you to do. It's not about power to dominate others, it's about power to no longer abandon yourself. Because as long as you don't look at this force and accept it, you will continue to be a spectator of your own life, and in the end you will realize that the greatest enemy was not out there, but within you, disguised as fear, complacency, false peace. Perhaps it's time to stop fighting what moves you and finally move with it, because only those who allow themselves to be guided by the hidden instinct discover that deep down they were always free. They just didn't know it yet. Perhaps you don't even notice, but there is a subtle veil covering the eyes of those who have learned to live to please. A veil of complacency that confuses kindness with submission, generosity with self-abandonment. It's as if, with each concession you make, a thread of this veil intertwines with your gaze, making everything blurry, murky, difficult to see. You believe you are being kind, that you are keeping the peace, that you are doing the right thing, but in reality, you are just yielding, letting others decide for you, letting the world tell you who you should be. And this veil weighs heavily. It weighs because it carries all the expectations you have accumulated throughout your life. What your family expects, what your friends want, what society demands. And when you realize it, the veil of complacency has turned into a web that traps you, a dance of concessions that makes you lose yourself. Nietzsche said that the bravest person is the one who dares to say yes to themselves, not to blind selfishness, but to the truth they carry within. But how can you say yes to yourself when the veil of complacency teaches you from childhood that the most important thing is not to displease, that it's better to yield than to be rejected, that it's nobler to remain silent than to speak your own truth? This is the dilemma that imprisons the human spirit, to live not to bother, or to live not to abandon oneself anymore. And as long as you choose the first option, you will merely be surviving, not living. Because true living is having the courage to tear through the veil of complacency, to say enough to everything that prevents you from being whole. Close your eyes for a moment. Feel the lightness that comes when you imagine a world where you don't have to apologize for being who you are. A world where you can occupy your place without having to diminish anyone, without having to diminish yourself to fit. Breathe. Notice how your body relaxes when you let go of the obligation to always be right, always please, always keep the peace. Because true peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of truth. And the truth hurts, but it liberates. The veil of complacency is, in fact, fear disguised as virtue. And as long as you continue to use it as protection, you will remain a hostage to others' expectations. Nietzsche reminds us that life is too short to be lived according to others' molds. It's time to let go of the veil, to walk with open eyes, to dance your own dance without fear of being out of tune. Because only those who have the courage to be whole discover the freedom of being true. The root of fear is an ancient seed planted in the human heart, a seed that germinates in childhood, watered by family demands, by the silent criticisms of school, by the comparisons society imposes. It's as if, from an early age, we were taught that fear is a reliable compass. If it hurts, avoid it. If it's uncomfortable, flee. If it threatens, yield. But the truth is that fear is a trap, an echo of our most primitive self. Neuroscience shows that every time we feel threatened, the brain's amygdala triggers an alarm. It's the same structure that made us survive the dangers of the forest, but which today traps us in invisible cages of anxiety, guilt, and self-abandonment. Nietzsche knew that the root of fear was the greatest obstacle to the will to power, because fear makes you believe you are small, that you cannot, that you should not. It makes you forget that life is more than security. It is discovery, expansion, risk. And so, every time you choose silence not to confront, every time you swallow your tears not to displease, every time you postpone a dream not to disappoint, you feed the root of fear. It grows like a weed in the soul, suffocating the vital force that Nietzsche said was the essence of existence. Perhaps you've never noticed how this fear manifests itself. Sometimes it's a lump in your throat, a tightness in your chest, insomnia that visits you in the early hours. Sometimes it's that deep sigh you take before accepting something you didn't want, just to avoid the discomfort of saying no. It's as if you were programmed to annul yourself, not to stir the waters, not to draw attention to yourself. But every time you do this, the root of fear deepens. And the deeper it goes, the harder it is to pull out. Breathe, feel your body. Notice where fear resides in you. Perhaps it's in your stomach, perhaps in your back, perhaps in your throat. Nietzsche taught us that we must have the courage to look at fear, not to eliminate it, but to understand it. Because fear doesn't go away just because you want it to. It goes away when you face it, when you understand it, when you discover that it is not stronger than your will to truly live. Because truly, living is, above all, having the courage to say, I am not a hostage to fear, I am the strength that overcomes it. There's an illusion that accompanies us from our first steps, that control of our lives is always external. We grow up believing that it is others who make us happy, that it is the world that needs to give us permission to be who we are. It's as if every choice depended on others' approval, as if external applause were the validation stamp of our existence. And so, little by little, we hand over the rudder of our lives to those who don't always know where they want to go. It's as if every yes said to please were, in fact, a no to oneself, a small, silent betrayal that slowly builds an invisible prison. Nietzsche warns us that the will to power is not born to dominate others, but to dominate oneself. And as long as we believe that our happiness depends on the gaze of others, we will always be at the mercy of others' tides. It's like being in a boat without a rudder, letting ourselves be carried by the waves of what others want or expect from us. How many times have you postponed a dream so as not to disappoint someone? How many times have you said yes so as not to lose affection that seemed so fragile? How many times have you hidden what you truly felt to maintain a peace that exists only on the surface? This is how we surrender control of our lives to the external, and without realizing it, we cease to be the authors of our own story. Imagine for a moment how you feel after saying yes to everything in a single day. It's as if your body is crying for help, as if your soul is screaming for freedom. It's a weight that accumulates, making you question if there's still space for you amidst so many concessions. Nietzsche invites us to look at this with brutal honesty. Who, after all, is holding the rudder of your life? Is it you, or is it others? Is it your will to power or external expectation? Is it the courage to live your truth or the fear of disappointing? This is the crossroads where the secret you ignore lies. Life owes you nothing. It is you who owes everything to yourself. Breathe deeply. Feel your body. Look within. Notice where you lost the rudder. Perhaps it's time to reclaim it. To accept that the only permission you need is the one that comes from your own soul. Because in the end, no one will live your life for you. And the greatest control you can have is the one that begins when you stop living for others and start living for yourself. The fear of displeasing is like an ancient echo that resonates deep in the soul, a voice that softly whispers that if you don't yield, you will be rejected. It's as if every time you say no, a part of you believes you are signing your own sentence of loneliness. This echo is so strong that often you anticipate saying yes even before realizing what you truly want. It's as if there's an invisible script that taught you from a very young age that maintaining harmony is more important than maintaining your own integrity. And so, you mold yourself, adjust, diminish yourself, to fit into the molds of those who don't always understand you. Nietzsche said that the greatest prison is not bars, but the invisible chains we build for ourselves. And the fear of displeasing is one of these chains. It's as if every time you give up yourself to please others, you reinforce the belief that your value lies outside, in the acceptance others give you, and never within in the acceptance you give yourself. That's why the echo of the fear of displeasing is so treacherous, because it wears the mask of kindness, gentleness, generosity. But behind this mask resides the emotional puppet that moves according to the tone of another's voice, that dances the music another chooses, that forgets its own melody so as not to be out of tune in someone else's orchestra. Close your eyes for a moment. Remember a time when you said yes wanting to say no. Remember how your body reacted, the tightness in your chest, the suffocating sensation. That's the echo of the fear of displeasing speaking louder than your truth. And as long as it's in command, your life will always seem like a stage where you are just an actor fulfilling the script that was written for you. Nietzsche reminds us that life is for those who have the courage to live without asking permission. And for that, you need the courage to face the echo of the fear of displeasing. Not to destroy it, but to transform it. Because fear will always exist. What changes is the place you give it, in the driver's seat or in the back seat. Breathe deeply. Feel your body. Feel the echo vibrating within you. It is not the enemy, it is the messenger. It tells you where you have not yet freed yourself, and only those who listen carefully to this echo discover that, behind it, lies the most important voice, your own. The awakening of the will to power is not a lightning bolt from the sky. It is not a scream that calls you in the dead of night. It is, most of the time, a whisper that visits you in the most improbable moments, in the middle of your routine on an ordinary day, while you wash the dishes or wait for the bus. It's that restlessness that makes you look around and ask, who would I be if I weren't afraid of displeasing? What would I do if I no longer needed anyone's approval? Nietzsche reminds us that life manifests as an impulse to grow, a force that makes us want more than just to survive, an energy that pushes us to be more than the world expects. This is the awakening of the will to power, when you feel that you can no longer live by concessions, when you realize that external harmony is not worth the price of your internal peace. But this awakening doesn't come without pain, because every time you choose to grow, you have to leave behind what kept you small. It's like leaving an old house where everything was known, safe, predictable, and walking into a forest where every step is an invitation to the unknown. The will to power is the courage to enter this forest, even knowing there will be thorns, that you will scratch yourself, that you might even get lost. Because what you find inside is more valuable than any approval. You find yourself, and it is this encounter that Nietzsche invites us to have, not with the ego you show to the world, but with the soul you hide even from yourself. Close your eyes for a moment. Breathe. Feel the will to power pulsing within you, like a fire you tried to put out so as not to bother. Perhaps it is still small, a timid flame, but it is alive, and it asks you only one thing: courage. Courage not to betray yourself anymore. Courage to say yes to what makes you grow, even if that means saying no to what kept you comfortable. Courage to look in the mirror and say, I am the owner of my story. Nietzsche said that to become who you are, you must first unlearn who they told you you should be. And this unlearning is painful, but it is in it that you find freedom. Because the will to power is not about dominating others. It is about freeing yourself from everything that prevents you from being whole. The shadow of morality is perhaps the most subtle prison Nietzsche invites us to see. A prison that has no bars, but limits more than any cell. From an early age, we are taught what is right and what is wrong, what is good and what is bad, who deserves to be loved and who deserves to be avoided. And little by little, these rules, these truths, these lessons settle in the soul like invisible tattoos. It's as if, with every choice you make, a voice asks you, is this right? Are you good enough? Will anyone judge you? And so you mold yourself, adapt, shrink, to fit into the molds of those who don't always understand you. Nietzsche said that traditional morality is often an instrument of domestication, a way to keep people within rules that serve society more than the soul. It's like a collar that tightens around your neck every time you dare to be different. But morality is not just what you do. It's also what you think about yourself. It's that guilt that visits you in the silence of the night, that regret that sprouts even when you know you needed to say no. It's the fear of being called selfish, ungrateful, rebellious. It's the burden of carrying others' expectations as if they were your own. And in this game of obedience, you forget your own voice. Because every time you choose to please so as not to hurt, you hurt yourself. And that's how the shadow of morality settles in, as a relentless judge who condemns you every time you choose yourself. Breathe deeply. Feel your body. Notice the weight of this morality that you carry without realizing it. Perhaps it's time to ask, who put these chains on you? Nietzsche invites us to go beyond good and evil, not to become a monster, but to discover our own truth. Because morality, when unquestioned, becomes a shadow that prevents you from flourishing. And only those who have the courage to look at this shadow discover that true morality is not following rules, but living with authenticity. Because there is no greater morality than being faithful to your own soul. And sometimes being faithful to yourself means disappointing those who expected you to be someone you never were. Nietzsche said that the greatest virtue is to have the courage to be who you are, even when the whole world wants you to be different. The dance of concessions is a silent ballet that humans learn as children, a choreographed movement to fit onto the stage that another has set up for them. Each step is an adjustment, each gesture is a renunciation, each smile is a mask. And, as the music plays, you keep dancing without realizing that with each beat, you are moving further away from yourself. Nietzsche reminds us that life is will to power, and every concession made unconsciously is like giving a part of that will to someone who doesn't know how to use it. It's as if, not to disturb someone else's peace, you gradually set aside your own peace. As if, not to disappoint, you gradually cease to exist. And in the end, you realize that the dance that was meant to be a celebration has turned into a choreography of submission. How many times have you said yes just to avoid discomfort? How many times have you smiled so as not to have to explain your own pain? How many times have you preferred silence so as not to provoke conflicts? It is in this dance that your strength is diluted, that your light goes out, that your truth hides. It's as if with each concession you are building a golden cage where the other feels comfortable, but you, the prisoner. Because those who get used to giving in too much don't realize that deep down, they are not being kind, they are being held hostage. Nietzsche would say that it is better to dance your own dance than to follow the rhythm imposed by hands that do not know your beat. Close your eyes for a moment. Breathe. Feel where your dance stopped being yours. Perhaps it's in relationships where you give more than you receive. Perhaps it's in the job that drains you, but which you don't have the courage to leave. Perhaps it's in the silences you carry, so as not to displease those who never realize the weight of your story. The dance of concessions is treacherous because it wears the mask of empathy, but hides the veil of servitude. And only those who have the courage to stop the music and ask, "Whose song is this?" discover that the rhythm that belongs to you is the one that comes from within, and that sometimes it is necessary to dance alone so as not to get lost in the beat of others. Nietzsche invites us to find our own pace, one that does not fear being out of tune, that does not need an audience to exist, because in the end, the only dance worth dancing is the one that makes you feel whole. And sometimes being whole means learning to say no to the music that is not yours. The power of choice is perhaps the greatest gift, and at the same time, the greatest burden that life gives us. Nietzsche reminds us that every choice is a seed planted in the soil of destiny, and often it is in the carelessness of small choices that you build the greatest of prisons. Because deep down it is not the big moments that define who you are, but those silent instants when you choose to be silent or speak, to yield or assert yourself, to stay or to leave. It is in these details that the will to power reveals itself, not as domination, but as the freedom to be who you truly are. How many times have you postponed a dream so as not to disappoint someone? How many times have you put others first to maintain harmony? How many times have you accepted less than you deserved because you were taught that it was wrong to desire more? Each of these choices is like a drop that, little by little, fills the cup of your frustration. And, when you least expect it, that cup overflows. It is at that moment that you realize that the life you have is not the one you chose. It is the one you let others choose for you. Breathe deeply. Feel your body. Remember all the times you said yes wanting to say no. Remember the times you postponed your own happiness to please someone who didn't even know how much you were hurting. Each of these choices was a lost opportunity to exercise the will to power, not over others, but over yourself. Because the power of choice is not about controlling the world, it is about not being controlled by it. It is about having the courage to look within and ask, what do I want, beyond what is expected of me? Nietzsche said that every choice you make should be worthy of being repeated eternally, the eternal recurrence. This does not mean that you cannot make mistakes, but that every choice is made with truth, with presence, with courage, because it is easy to blame others, blame fate, blame chance. It is difficult to assume that deep down, every step was taken by you, even if it was motivated by fear. But that is where freedom lies, understanding that if you chose one path, you can also choose another, and that the power to change begins when you stop pointing outwards and start looking inwards. Close your eyes, breathe, feel the flame of choice burning within you. It is not to hurt you, it is to remind you that you are not a victim of life, you are its protagonist, and the script you write today is the stage you will inhabit tomorrow. The strength of inner chaos is a truth that few have the courage to face, because from an early age we were taught to fear chaos, to flee from it as one flees from a fire. But Nietzsche reminds us that it is precisely in chaos that the power to create, to transform, to be reborn, resides. It is in chaos that the will to power finds the opportunity to manifest itself, not as blind destruction, but as a creative force. It is as if every broken fragment within you were, in fact, a piece of a new mosaic that life is inviting you to build. Perhaps you have learned to fear chaos. Perhaps every time something went out of control, you felt the ground disappear, the air run out, life become insecure. But chaos is not the end. It is the beginning. It is the secret laboratory of transformation. It is there, when everything seems to collapse, that old certainties crumble and make way for the new. Nietzsche said that one must have chaos within oneself to give birth to a dancing star. And this star is not what others want to see. It is not what society expects. It is not what you were taught to be. This star is your true self, the part of you that is not content with merely existing. Close your eyes for a moment. Breathe. Feel where your chaos resides. Perhaps it is in that relationship that ended, in that job that made you sick, in that pain that keeps you awake at night. Perhaps it is in that dream you shelved for fear of failing. Don't run anymore. Because the more you run from chaos, the more it grows in the darkness. The more you try to control everything, the more you lose control of yourself. Inner chaos is like a river that, when contained, overflows, but when accepted, finds its bed and follows its course. And in the movement of chaos, life finds its rhythm. Nietzsche reminds us that strength is not born from perfect order. It is born from the courage to face chaos and still walk on. Because only those who dance with chaos discover that behind the disorder, there is a harmony that fear cannot understand. It's like a symphony that at first seems like just noise, but which little by little reveals a unique melody, the melody of your soul. And this melody cannot be composed by anyone other than you. Breathe deeply, feel your body, let chaos pass through you. Allow yourself to be dismantled so that you can rebuild yourself. Because it is in chaos that you discover not who the world wants you to be, but who you are when no one is looking. And that discovery is worth every tear, every silence, every dark night of the soul. Because it is in chaos that your power is revealed. And from then on, nothing can stop you. The eternal recurrence of choice is a concept of Nietzsche that, at first glance, may seem merely a distant philosophical idea. But in reality, it is a mirror placed right in front of you, reflecting all your decisions. Imagine that every choice you make, every yes, every no, every silence, every step, would repeat forever, as if the universe were a scratched record that always returned to the same point. You would live the same life, with the same people, the same fears, the same victories and defeats, again and again for all eternity. Would you bear it? Or would you feel trapped, condemned to relive every mistake, every regret, every moment when you ceased to be who you were? Nietzsche provokes us to face life as if every choice were eternal, because in a way, it is. Every choice you make shapes who you become. Every yes said out of fear builds the path of regret. Every no said with courage erects the foundation of freedom. It's easy to believe that choices are fleeting, that if something goes wrong, you can just try again tomorrow. But the eternal recurrence reminds us that it's not that simple, because life is not a rehearsal. It's the show happening in real time. And you are the main actor, the screenwriter, and the director, all at the same time. Breathe deeply, feel your body. Think of a choice you made recently. Ask yourself, if I had to live this forever, would I live in peace or in regret? This question is not to paralyze you. It's to awaken you, because it's easy to get distracted by the noise of the world, by the hustle and bustle of daily life, by the voices that tell you what you should or shouldn't do. It's difficult to have the courage to look at your own life and say, I choose this. I choose to be who I am. Nietzsche reminds us that living with presence is living as if every moment were eternal. And that doesn't mean living in fear. It means living with truth. The eternal recurrence of choice is an invitation for you to live each day with the wholeness of one who understands that there is no rehearsal, no second chance, no audience waiting for applause. There is only you, the stage of life, and the courage to choose. And deep down, that is what sets you free, because only those who choose with truth write their own story, without fear of repeating the chapters. Inner rebirth is a silent process, almost imperceptible to the eyes of those who live only on the surface. It's as if, after traversing chaos, after facing your own shadow, after questioning every choice, something within you is reborn, not as someone returning to what they were before, but as someone reinventing themselves from what was destroyed. Nietzsche reminds us that everything that doesn't destroy us makes us stronger, and this strength is not just muscular or mental. It's a strength that springs from the soul, that makes you look in the mirror and see, for the first time, who you truly are. Perhaps you've been through this without realizing it. Perhaps you felt that after a great loss, a deep disappointment, a fall that seemed endless, something changed in you. It's as if a shell had fallen, as if old skin had been shed, and in place of fear, courage was born. In place of shame, dignity was born. In place of doubt, clarity was born. This is inner rebirth, the ability to transform pain into wisdom, silence into strength, loneliness into space for oneself. It's as if every scar became a medal, a reminder that you are stronger than any storm. Breathe deeply, feel your body. Remember all the times you fell and had to get up. Remember all the times they said you wouldn't make it and you went and did. This is inner rebirth. It's not about being perfect, but about rebuilding yourself every time life breaks you down. Because the will to power is not just about dominating, it's about being reborn. It's about transforming what breaks you into steps to grow. Nietzsche reminds us that each of us has a flame within that cannot be extinguished, and it is this flame that guides you in the darkness. Inner rebirth is, above all, an act of self-love. It's when you stop asking for permission to exist. It's when you understand that you don't need anyone's approval to live your own truth. It's when you discover that the greatest victory is not over others, but over the fear that prevented you from being yourself. Nietzsche teaches us that the man who rebuilds himself is more powerful than one who was never destroyed, because he knows that, even shattered, he can remake himself. And that is the strength no one can take from you. It is the strength that makes you invincible. Ultimately, the will to power is not just a philosophy by Nietzsche. It is the silent invitation that life gives you every day to live beyond expectations, beyond fear, beyond concessions. It is the call to take the helm of your own story, to transform chaos into strength, and to look at your own shadows with the dignity of one who knows that even darkness is part of the path. Because there is no greater freedom than being who you are, without apologizing, without seeking permission, without hiding behind the masks the world insists on placing. Breathe deeply, feel your body, feel the pulse of life calling you to be reborn. Because you are not a hostage to fate, you are its creator. Every step you take, every choice you make, every silence you break or embrace is a declaration of who you are. And in the end, it doesn't matter how many times you fell or how many times you were afraid. What matters is the courage to get up, the strength to start over, the desire to be greater than any limitation life tried to impose on you. Nietzsche reminds us that life is a work of art in progress, and you are the artist. Your choices are the paint, your courage is the brush, and the canvas is the time given to you. Don't waste the chance to paint your story with the colors of truth, because only those who allow themselves to live with wholeness discover that the secret of the will to power is not to dominate others, but to dominate oneself. And from then on, Nothing can stop you. Now close your eyes for a moment. Breathe. Feel the flame of your inner strength, because it is there that freedom resides, it is there that power resides, it is there that your rebirth resides. And while the world expects you to fit in, you discover that you were not born to fit. You were born to expand, to exist with courage, to be the author of your own life. And if this message touched something within you, it's because you were ready to awaken, because the will to power already dwells within you, just waiting for your permission to be set free.